But in the newsletter, what we started doing, we learned that those really big buttons, like buy now, buy book 2 now, in red, really help. I would put links in. It's like, okay, if you feel like buying our book, here's a link right here. But by putting those big buttons and putting buttons to all the platforms. So it wasn't just Amazon, and it wasn't even just a universal book link. Here's Kobo, here's Amazon, here's Barnes & Noble, here's Apple. And we do get people clicking on all of them.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 209 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In today's episode, I have a conversation with Kerrie Flanagan and Chuck Harrelson. They talk about growing their sales, growing their subscribers, and a cool new Twitch marketing campaign that they embarked on. And you may remember Kerrie and Chuck because Kerrie is by far the author who's been on the podcast the most. She appeared in episode 31 where she was talking to me about writing and selling magazine articles. This is in the traditional publishing sphere, actually selling articles to journals and magazines. And then I had Kerrie back with Chuck on episode 45. They talked about co-authoring, and they were talking about working together, talking about one of the pseudonyms we'll talk about in this interview, writing romance. And then I had them both back for episode 117. I had Kerrie, Chuck, but I also had McLeod Andrews, who is a voice actor and narrator of their C.G. Harris Judas Files books. And that was a really delightful conversation as well. So they're back again because they're always doing really interesting things. And Kerrie had reached out to me to let me know about this really cool Twitch campaign that they were sponsoring. And I love the idea of getting into a different audience. But again, I'll get to that reflection later, and I'll get to that fascinating conversation later on. First, let's hear a word from this episode's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Findaway Voices. Findaway Voices is a platform that allows authors and small publishers the opportunity to get their audiobooks distributed into a global market of more than 43 retail and library channels. You can find a narrator through Findaway Voices, or you can use them for distribution. So, recent example of Findaway Voices is I've spent much of the last week working on the audiobook for The Relaxed Author with Joanna Penn. Now, Joe is narrating the Joanna parts, and Mark is narrating the Mark parts, and so we divided that up because that's how the book was written, specifically in our voices. So there's a content or a topic, and we've each applied our own perspective that was initially part of a series of conversations we had recorded. So it was really fascinating. We started with speech, we transposed it, we edited that sort of ad hoc discussion and tweaked it and went back and forth and did the editing. And now, of course, Joe's read her bits. I've read my bits. And I just, after finishing my bits, I then stitched them all together, ran them through the mastering process. And this is one of the great things about Findaway Voices is Wesley, who is a fantastic engineer at Findaway Voices. Great guy. I had the pleasure of getting to hang out with him, but also brilliant, sharp as a whip, and he creates, there's articles, there's videos where he walks you through how to master an audio file for doing it yourself. Now, I was using Adobe Audition, which is one of the recommended tools, and that's what he uses as an example, to get the files into the right ranges, and all of the steps, step-by-steps, visual, very well explained. And I love that because this is something, this book, The Relaxed Author, is going to be published globally. It's going to be available all over the world in all kinds of markets. Ask for it at your local library. It'll be listed probably within the next few weeks because we do hope for the audiobook to actually be in most systems by the time the book launches on, I believe it's September 18th is the date, September 18th, 2021. But that's one of the great things about working with Findaway, is you have the flexibility. You can find a professional narrator, or if you want to do it yourself, they actually help you figure it out. They help you, provided you're willing to invest in the tools and invest the time. That's an important thing to do. Now, interestingly enough, and I'll probably talk a little bit more about this in my personal update, is having just gone through the setup and doing the audiobook for this, I want to go back and do my other audiobooks. Because again, Findaway Voices makes it that much easier for the author. And if you want to see how you can leverage Findaway Voices for your audiobook experience as an author, you can check them out over at starkreflections.ca/Findaway. And now for a bit of a personal update. I'm not sure if you could hear that towards the end of my Findaway bit, but I had the window open because it's starting to cool off, early September, of course. And there were crows outside, and they were making a hell of a noise. And I actually had looked outside a couple times. You probably, to tell my voice kind of moved if you're listening to this in stereo. It moved to one side as I was looking out the window, because I could have sworn I was in the middle of an Alfred Hitchcock movie for a second there. But I wasn't able to hear it, at least when I was listening back and cleaning up that last bit. But let's get on with the personal update, shall we? So the personal update is I have not died from a bird attack, a la, Birds by Alfred Hitchcock, but I am still leery of what the heck was going on outside. But that's just one thing. As I mentioned in the Findaway Voices update, so doing this audiobook with Joe, and again, the reason I got it done is because Joanna was relying on me, and I am a person who very much works to task, works to deadline. And because we had set a deadline and she was relying on me, I got it done. For myself, on some previous audiobook projects, for my nonfiction, because I do prefer to hire a narrator, a professional narrator for my fiction. What I do is for my when I have the author's notes at the end, those are read by me, but the fiction is actually read by a professional talent rather than me. With the nonfiction, because I have the podcast, because listeners like you, dear listener, recognize my voice and know me. So if you're reading a book for me, then you're comfortable potentially, or familiar at least, with what my voice is going to be. But the only nonfiction book in the Stark Reflections series, I have 5 out now. The only book that's actually completed is the 7 P's of Publishing Success. And that's the shortest one, right? 16,000 words or so. So because I did Publishing Pitfalls for Authors, and it is, I think it's 30,000? I'm trying to remember. I think it was somewhere in that realm. Because it is, relatively short, or shorter than Wide for the Win and an author's guide to working with bookstores and libraries and killing it on Kobo, I'm going to go with that first. And the reason I'm doing that is because I have one book in the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing series in audio. And I'm going to have this book with Joanna Penn, but I wanted to get some other assets, because there may be people who just prefer to listen to it. And I want to double down and get that done. So I'm going to block some time in my calendar to in the next week or two to work on start with Publishing Pitfalls for Authors, because again, it's the shorter one. I could be able to get it done a lot quicker, and then work my way through. I'm not sure. I might do Wide for the Win. I did start recording Wide for the Win, some pieces, so I already have some pieces done, but then I just kind of had other things to do, which happens. But interestingly, there's a phrase, there's a saying that I always come back to, is that writing begets more writing. I find that when I'm in writing modes and I'm constantly writing, and I'm scheduling regular morning writing times every day, that the act of writing every day helps me write more. And I know it sounds weird, but the process, doing the writing on a more regular basis, means less time goofing around and warming up, and I can get right into it. And I find the same thing with audiobooks is, stop fooling around. I had, I still, the sheet's still sort of hanging from one corner of the ceiling because I didn't take it down completely, because I wanted to remind myself, because I had, for most of the week, during like certain time periods, I would just have like the sheet across my entire front of my desk. And then I would hang, only when I was doing the actual recording would I hang the second one that would block me in completely to reduce the echo. And I remember my son looking at me, he's like, "Dad, what are you doing? Like, you building a fort? Like, what's the thing?" And it's very much like building a fort, which is a lot of fun, even for this 52-year-old. But yeah, so I've got the sheet there, and it's just a reminder, because I'm going to want to do that, because I think what I had to do with this is, rather than, oh my God, this isn't 100% perfect, and I should re-record this completely from the beginning. Instead of doing that, I recognized, no, I've got to get this done, and I doubled down and I just did it, which I think is an important thing. I need that. I need to kick myself in the pants, and I need to have someone waiting for me in order to get it done, or some sort of commitment like that. So that's important, and so that's, anyways, that process of doing that again reminded me that, when you actually just sit down and do it, you get it done. And it's the same thing for your writing. When you actually just sit down and do it and commit yourself to do it, you'd be amazed what you can get done. But anyway, that's an early reflection. In terms of other personal things, I am working on, I'm digging back into Fright Night's A Big City. So I'm about a little more than halfway through the book, and there's a couple decisions I have to make that are kind of related to going back and doing a bit more research, and I've kind of been stalling on that because I want to have the big evil. I want to have the thing that the bad guys are trying to do to be something that's realistic enough with the magic and all of the black magic that they're employing. So I need to make that somewhat realistic, and so it's kind of been I've been putting it off because I've been procrastinating on it, to be quite honest. Working on all kinds of other things. Wrote another book that I hadn't even been planning on doing, or that had been on the back burner forever. Two books actually that have been on the back burner. One I haven't actually talked about in any detail yet, but yeah, I need to get back into that, because I do need to get that done, so that I can get that edited, and so that I can get that to my professional narrator. See, I can't speak. Professional narrator Scott Overton, so that for the December release, I actually have the audiobook available immediately. I think with Fear and Longing in Los Angeles, I think because of my delays on getting everything done, I got the audiobook out only a week or two after the hardcover, paperback, ebook, etc. And I want to try and get that out all at the same time, or close to the same time as possible, because there are people who prefer to just listen to the audiobook. And that's it for my personal update, but I do want to, before we get into the interview, I want to welcome new patron Malcolm Kuhn to the fold. Welcome, Malcolm. Thank you so much for your patronage of the Stark Reflections podcast. Malcolm, you should be getting a message from me soon with welcoming you and reminding you how you can get access to the additional audio content available. There's backlist episodes of Stark Reflections on other podcasts, and so many other audio tidbits, including the complete 7 P's of publishing success I realized I released to my patrons, the audio version, the computerized version, and I believe my version. I've got to double check that. There are so many audio bits and tidbits that are available to patrons at that at the second or third level of patronage. But thank you, Malcolm, so much for your support. And thanks to all my patrons who support this podcast over at patreon.com/starkreflections. It was awesome to see such a great hearty boost of new patrons joining in the last couple of months. And I do appreciate you guys taking the time and money to toss some cash my way to help support my time in the producing of this podcast. One of the things I'm really proud about this podcast is it is a weekly podcast that I started the first week of January 2018. And I have not missed a single Friday in all of that time, and I'm very, very proud of that. And I owe that to you, the listeners, and you, the patrons, you, the people who comment and share on social media the podcast, because that's the kind of thing that keeps me going, knowing that you're actually interested and want this content to happen. And so when even like this week, this is a Friday morning that I'm actually recording this. And normally I do this on Thursday, but other things happened, and I wasn't able to get it done as early as I like to. I usually like to have it out in the feed by midnight Eastern Standard Time, and then the show notes go up on Friday morning. And there have been times when I've been working on it on Friday morning and getting it out, because things have piled up and I have so much work to do. And when I tell myself, it's like, well, I can always just skip this week or whatever. Like, it's not really going to hurt, is it? And I think, no, this is a commitment that I've made to you, dear listener, that I'm going to produce a new episode every Friday. And I have, luckily enough, I've produced probably 10 or 15 additional episodes on top of that. No, not a gigantic amount of additional episodes into the regular feed, but if you actually do the math of the weeklies, you realize I've gotten more than those weeklies. And I owe that thanks to my patrons, thanks to my listeners, and thanks to those who comment, because that's what drives me and motivates me to keep going with this podcast. So that's it for the introductory babble and ramble of this podcast. Let's get into the interview with Kerrie and Chuck. Kerrie, Chuck, welcome back to the Stark Reflections podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to have you guys back. Kerrie, I think you're probably the most recurring guest I've ever had on the podcast so far. So congratulations, and Chuck, you're right up there, of course, as well. To catch my listeners up, you guys have created a special collaboration. Can we go back to that origin story, the backstory of what you're writing, the series, and why you decided to work together?
Sure. So Chuck and I have been friends probably at least 10 years, if not longer. And we've always helped each other out with our writing. So if I had things I needed another pair of eyes, Chuck would read through it, give me great feedback, vice versa. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, we thought it would be fun to write some genre fiction together and self-publish and see what would happen. And found that we really, really like doing that. And we work together really well. So Chuck, you can go from there and share what we're currently working on.
Yeah. Well, right now we're finishing up. We've got a series, a 5-book series called the Judas Files. We're finishing up that series right now, and a 3-book science fiction series, which the final book in that series will be out here in November. So we're finishing up that series as well. So we'll have 2 finished series coming out. So
wow. And then we have, I know you always forget to mention these, but we also have 4 romance books out.
Yeah, I keep forgetting about those too, because I don't think you had the Sci-Fi started yet, or at least published yet the last time we spoke, but we were talking about the Judas Files a lot. Mm-hmm. I think because the last time you guys were on the podcast, there was an additional collaborator with you, yes. Your audiobook professional audiobook narrator as well. So the Judas Files, are you wrapping up that series?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we're just about finished with it. We've got, like I said, we're on the 5th book now. So we decided to kind of wrap that one up, and I don't know what we're going to do next. We haven't really kind of talked about it yet, but I'm sure we'll start something else.
So I'm curious then, the move into sci-fi, we won't get into romance just yet, but the move into sci-fi after this, for lack of a better, it's sort of urban fantasy-esque, I think is probably the best way to describe. Tell us the premise of the Judas Files, just to remind folks, if it's been a while since they've heard you guys chat about it last time.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Well, it's a log line we have. We always tell people it's a gritty contemporary fantasy about a dead underworld agent who spends his time secretly trying to right the wrongs perpetrated by his nefarious employer, Judas Iscariot.
Cool.
So, yeah. Awesome. It's a fun series for sure.
So what propagated? Did you always know it would be 5 books and you just wrapped it up? Or was there another reason why you said, hey, we want to do this sci-fi series?
we were doing them simultaneously. Chuck had already written the first one of the racks. And so we decided, well, let's finish that series together. So we have been kind of working on both at the same time, and made that one a 3-book series. And then with the Judas Files, when we started writing it, we were very excited about it. And I still love the whole world that we have going. Originally, we were looking at like a 10 to 12 book series.
Right. Yeah.
That was before we wrote them all. So
yeah.
Is it that all the many ideas ended up compiling themselves into the existing books, or just something else happened?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's basically what happened, because we were like, okay, then it was like, no, maybe we'll do 8. And then we're pulling things from our big whiteboard giant story arc and like, well, maybe we can do 5. And but the world that we've created, it allows for other opportunities in the future if we decide to move forward with something else in that world. And
Okay.
Yeah, I think we tied everything up well.
Yeah.
And still left enough loose ends in the world to start again if we really decided to.
So when the fans demand it, you can give them something else from that.
Oh
world.
yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
All right.
Yes.
Cool.
when it's selling millions, Mark, we'll write with it.
Right.
We're not afraid to do that. That's fine.
What was that line from The Simpsons? Krusty the Clown said, they drove a truckload of money up to my house. How could I say no?
Yeah, exactly.
The Sci-Fi series was something you'd already started working on. Is it in any way related to this universe, or it's a completely separate sphere? Can you tell me about that series?
Sure. So this one is definitely very different. An apocalyptic sci-fi about a blind boy who has just discovered he is humanity's last hope against a marauding alien race who has the ability to use fear as a weapon.
Cool.
So it's the 3-book series. And with this one, you have to have read the one before it. So it definitely needs to be read in order, but we are wrapping it up in November so people can rest assured that it will be finished.
Was it a monthly release schedule then, or was it what was the schedule for the release?
So that one, that was just kind of when we could fit it in.
Okay.
Between the Judas Files books. So we haven't done a lot of marketing for that one because we decided, all right, we're going to focus on the Judas Files. The same thing happened with the romance. They're not going anywhere, but our attention needed to be in one place for a little bit.
And then I imagine that once the trilogy is wrapped up, then you can start pushing people into it, because then they'll have the satisfaction of being able to binge it.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's
well, especially since like Kerrie said, it was this series is you have to read all 3. Like the Judas Files, you could kind of pick up the Judas Files in the middle if you really wanted to and understand what was going on. This one, it's definitely a read one after the other series. So we kind of wanted to have all 3 of them, ready at least.
Before we started marketing.
Yeah. I am curious to explore your journey through deciding to be wide or exclusive, and how that might have altered over time.
We have tried both. And I know in your book and in your podcast, you don't like people bouncing back and forth. And I get it, because you got to go all in one direction. So I'm thinking initially we were wide, and then we're like, well, let's try going exclusive to see what happens. Because I feel like it's good to test to see if we have great results. If we had great results going exclusive and doing KDP Select, then we'll stay there. But it didn't really happen. So we're like, all right, we're going to take everything wide again and then focus on that.
How long did you go exclusive for? I mean, did you give it a good college try?
I think 2 rounds, so 6 months.
Yep, half a year.
I think that's about right. I'd have to go back and look. And then even when we went wide, we were still focusing on Amazon.
Right.
A lot of our time and energy and marketing money was going to Amazon, because it's a little scary to let that go and think, all right, what if we started putting some more time and energy and potentially marketing money toward the other platforms? But when we did, which has just been recent, because you've seen our graphs for what's happened with our books, it has been over the past few months. There's been a huge difference. The last 2 months, Apple has outsold Amazon for our royalties and our sales.
So let's explore that for a second.
Sure.
What did you do differently? You said you were focusing on marketing on Amazon,
Mhm.
and maybe going wide again after 3 months. You're like, what made you decide to stick it out rather than give up again?
We just decided we were trying different things. And Chuck, you got to jump in anytime here. I know what the first thing we did when we just knew we had to do is build the newsletter list. I've known this for a long time. And you've done this with things, Mark, where you're supposed to do something and then you're like, just hasn't happened. But we decided we better do that. So last August, we had 55 subscribers. We are now at over 3,000. So,
What did you
Chuck,
do?
Chuck, why don't you explain a little bit about what we did to build that initially?
Yeah, we did a lot of research. And then it was kind of came at the end of, or not, I shouldn't say the end, but kind of came at that point where we were trying to find other ways other than Amazon to market. And newsletters was something that kind of popped up, recurring. We kept talking about newsletters, and then never did it. And then did some research and on ways to build our list, and kind of came up with a few things. And one of them was actually Facebook ads. And we kind of re-diverted a lot of our funds that were initially going to Amazon into Facebook ads, and not to sell books necessarily. We converted one of our books into a reader magnet, like a perma-free reader magnet that we put on Facebook that was free. So the first book in our series was free if you signed up for our newsletter.
Oh, so it was the first book was paid on the platforms, but if you signed up to the newsletter, you got it for free.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. All right.
And that was a huge boon for us. Like our newsletter list grew exponentially. I don't know, I couldn't tell you how many a month, but it was growing by hundreds, at a time. So it grew a lot there.
You knew this was Judas Files, so you knew that they were fans of that series too.
Exactly. Okay. So they were quality subscribers.
Right.
It wasn't just somebody signing up because they wanted, a free whatever we were giving away or something. I don't know. I know there's a lot of which is very successful in some places, but they'll give away some prize in exchange for signing up for their newsletter list. But I don't think that's quite as good as them signing up for your book, because like I said, that they're reading your book. So and then read through was another thing. It helped us with read through because we were giving away our first book, and we saw a huge rise in read through with our other books because they would read our first book and it was free.
Right.
So we weren't obviously making any money, but we were gaining subscribers on our newsletter list, which allowed us to control something that we could market to. And then we were starting to see read-through sales on our other books. So that was really good too.
Did that impact, so potentially the sales of book one on the different platforms may not have been as high as book two in this case, because a lot of your dedicated fans would have gotten it for free, but was there a call to action in your newsletter to say, hey, now that you've read it, could you go review it somewhere? Was that a part of the strategy?
Yeah, so we had an onboarding series emails that would go out once they signed up. And then what we started doing in the newsletter, well, and first initially we were only giving the 9 away for free as the reader magnet. And then earlier this year, a few months back, we did make it perma-free to also try that strategy. But in the newsletter, what we started doing, we learned that those really big buttons, like buy now, buy book 2 now in red, really help. I would put links in. It's like, okay, if you feel like buying our book, here's a link right here. But by putting those big buttons and putting buttons to all the platforms. So it wasn't just Amazon, and it wasn't even just a universal book link. Here's Kobo, here's Amazon, here's Barnes & Noble, here's Apple. And we do get people clicking on all of them. And that has helped with the read through. And I feel like that has really helped this build our wide platform. And we're getting 500-600 people opening every newsletter. So you can't get that on Facebook. 500 or 600 people aren't seeing any Facebook posts or tweets.
Yeah, of course.
So it allows us to directly market to the readers who we know like our books.
So how does that translate? So if they've signed up for this modern contemporary fantasy series, and now you have a dystopian science fiction, are you seeing, like, how are you warming them into that series, or trying to move them over into that series, or maybe even the romance? Have you done any of that?
We haven't cross-pollinated with the romance yet, because they're under 2 separate.
Oh, that's a different name. That's right. I forgot about
that. So we have C.G. Harris for the sci-fi fantasy and C.K. Wiles for the romance. We started putting in little bits about the racks, and we offered it to our newsletter list exclusively. We gave them the first book in the series for free. What was it, like a month ago, to get them ready, because we knew the book 3 was coming out.
And then that way you could identify that of that group, there's a subset that will also go with dystopian sci-fi.
Exactly.
Wow.
So yeah, definitely newsletter. I'm trying to think what else. And anytime we do newsletter promotions, the paid ones like Fussy Librarian, Totally Book Raid, we make sure that there's links, that we include all the links for all the platforms.
Right.
So
is there any indication of why Apple was so successful, or was it you just created? Oh, there is. So why? What did you do?
It took me a minute.
Give us all the secrets.
They had put the 9 on one of their featured pages as a free first in series. That's what it was.
Okay.
So it was like, because I couldn't figure out. It took me a while to figure that one out.
But somebody at Apple, probably Apple in the US, had put it on the free. Yeah, those are very popular from what I hear, because they're very well trafficked. Obviously, that brought in a lot. And obviously, so you said Apple sales recently, or just in the last month or two, Apple sales actually outpaced your Amazon sales.
They did.
Sweet. Wait until the box set comes out and you make 70% on the full box set, right? Because it's over $10.
There you go.
Apple.
Yeah, we haven't. Yes, we haven't talked about the full box set yet. We have a box set of the first 2.
But but you have to keep for Amazon, you have to keep the box set below $9.99, which means you probably lose money. But you don't have that restriction on Apple and Kobo and Nook, of course, and
this
Google.
Is good to know.
There you go.
See? Learn something every time I talk to you, Mark.
Well, hey, if you're rocking it on Apple, I want to see you just continue to grow those things on Apple. Well, that's fantastic. So did you have a rep at Apple? Like, how did they just discover it on their own? How did that happen? Did you send them flowers or something?
I did reach out to them and say, hey, by the way, we have this cool series, and it's free, perma-free right now. So, and that was it. So I just shot that off.
Grabbed it, didn't even tell you, probably. Just said, I will stick it.
Nobody told me.
I'd rather they do that. Don't tell me. Tell your readers.
Right. Exactly. So it worked.
That's cool. What about the other platforms? Have you gotten traction on the other ones since you've sort of been wide for a bit longer?
Yes. Sorry, Chuck, I just keep going here because.
No, go.
Okay.
Keep talking.
Okay. And Kobo, I've been direct, except for those 6 months where we were trying KDP Select. I've always loved Kobo, and that's you were working for Kobo when we initially met. They always offer wonderful promotions. So I'm applying for those every single month, whichever one's fit. So there's always a Kobo promotion in the wings for us. So we do see sales there. It goes up and down depending on the promotion, but it doesn't matter. I'll keep applying for those. And then I've started, Barnes and Noble now has promotions you can apply for, which I didn't know until I joined the Wide for Wind Facebook group. So I got all the books are direct with Barnes and Noble so that we can take advantage of those promotions. And we have one coming up this weekend. It'll be our first Barnes and Noble one. We'll see how that goes.
I hear they do well.
That's what I keep hearing.
Yeah, excellent. Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Yes.
Are you noticing? Well, okay, B&N is only available in the States. Amazon is primarily US and UK. But are you noticing through the other platforms? Are you picking up new sales and territories outside of where you would have just been with Amazon? It would have been like those two main English territories.
Yes, we get Australia and Canada. We've had I think some Germany, and Kobo is always great. I love the little map where they show you all the countries. But we are seeing sales from around the world. I would say Australia and Canada are the next big ones.
Google Play, I imagine you're direct with them to get some global sales, right?
I am. Not a lot going on there yet, but it's slowly because I think it was just last month or 6 weeks ago that we put it direct there.
Right. And when we were prior to this chat, I think you had sent me some really sexy sunburst charts to show, hey, this is our first 3 months of being Wide, which is really pretty Amazon centric. And then 6 months later, I think, and that was scribe count. Yeah. I'll share. If it's okay, I can share the graphs on the show notes at starkreflections.ca. But so you use scribe count as a useful tool then to measure where your sales are coming from?
Yes, I find it helpful, and it's pretty. I like all the colors.
Pretty is always good, yeah.
Well, it's just so easy. You look and you're like, wow, okay. What is this green one? Oh, that's Apple. It's doing way better. So, I like it. And all the graphs too.
Yeah, all the graphs and the charts and the map of the world and stuff like that there. Is so when we spoke the previous times, it was about the way you collaborate and the way that you write. I'd love to review that quickly, just for listeners who may not have caught that episode. Shame on them; they should really go back and listen.
Exactly.
But there will be a link in the show notes to that to the previous times we've chatted. But I also want to then migrate into how similar or different that is with your marketing collaboration, because obviously you have to work together to decide what you're going to do. So how does the writing collaboration work? And then let's migrate into marketing collaboration.
All right, Chuck, I've done a lot of talking.
Well, the writing collaboration, it goes, we kind of get together on ideas and outlining and that kind of thing was when we kind of come up with an idea for a book. And then I will come up with the detailed outline portion of it and bounce it over to Kerrie, and she puts her bits into it and anything else that she wants to add to it. And then I'll go from there and write the first draft. And then I shoot it over to Kerrie, and Kerrie adds in, like, I'm terrible at adding in emotional stuff. So Kerrie's great at that kind of stuff. So she adds in a lot of things that I miss and into the story, and usually it comes back to me, and I'm shortening all this, and I make it sound really short, but it's really kind of a not editing process. But and it comes back to me, and then we do line edits and bounce those back and forth a little bit. And, we actually send it out to a third editor after that, even, because believe it or not, even with 2 eyes, it's not nearly enough.
Right.
And then after that, that's kind of the process. I mean, that's a down and dirty, super simplified version, but.
And you even run it through AutoCrit, which is like similar to Grammarly, to try to catch those things that we missed, and echo words and passives.
Right.
And then when we can, and when we're on top of things, even a couple beta readers who catch a couple more things. So.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's unbelievable how many things you think you've got everything, and then you run it through 5 more people and they'll find 5 more completely different sets of mistakes that you made.
It's the same thing with the science fiction series, right? The relatively same process.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yep.
So how about the decision to go wide and the marketing? Like, hey, this is how we're going to do the Facebook ads. This is what we're going to do for the newsletter. How does that collaboration fit together?
Yep. Kerrie?
A lot of that, and well, I do a lot of research. I'm on a lot of the Facebook groups, but once a month we get together and we look at the money part and where do we want to put our marketing money, and then decide what our strategy is for that upcoming month. So I may come to him with lots of ideas and say, here's the things I have found and what's working with for people, and then together we figure out which ones we're going to do. So that's how that works. But I'm the one that I will upload the books. I will take care of updating the content, which I'm a little nervous about now that I've gone direct with Barnes & Noble and Google Play, because now I have 5 platforms to update. So it just helps to have Chuck there to at least check in with me and like, all right, did you get this one and this one and this one? Because when you have 5 books you have to update, and then on all the platforms. So that's how that goes. And we try to, some months are better than others. We try to do a good job on tracking, what we're putting out, what we're spending, and then what's coming in. And lately we have cut way back because, if you're not bringing in a ton of money, you only have so much to spend. So we're like, all right, let's see what happens if we go tiny shoestring. We cut back on Amazon ads. We're keeping them up more for the impressions than anything, just so it keeps showing up on the page. Honestly,
Right.
we're not, we're looking at $10 to $20 a month is all we're spending there.
Just a little bit of a kick in the pants
Exactly.
to keep it a little bit higher.
Exactly.
So I am curious then about the logistics, because you're getting 5 or more sources of income. You have outcome in terms of expenditures.
Yep.
Does that all go into a shared account that you use to fund the marketing and stuff like that?
Yes. So we do have one bank account, which makes it easy. We didn't at the beginning, and that was
I used to have to. I get the money and then I got to figure out how much you get
Yeah,
This makes
for your 80 cents you made on Amazon Mexico or whatever.
right.
Yeah.
So this makes it so much easier. We did it
Yeah.
about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
That probably streamlined things a lot. Otherwise it is, because Amazon pays you 12 different times in a single month. It's like, here's your giant US money and your giant UK money, and here's your 15 cents in whatever,
Exactly.
India or wherever yeah. So that I could find that could be frustrating doing the math. Otherwise, it's like, no, it all goes into a central bucket, and then you guys can work it out from there. I think that makes it a lot easier. So speaking of collaborations, you were sharing with me offline earlier this really cool Twitch thing that you had done. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. So my daughter, who's 26, her and her roommates, they have their own channel on Twitch. So if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's where gamers get on there. They play video games. People can watch them play video games, and it's like a Zoom call, but with video games. And then you see them while they're playing, and they interact with the audience through chat, and they'll be on there for hours. So they had started that, about a year ago, and it's weirdly fun to watch. I didn't think I would like it because, quite a bit of a difference there in ages with my daughter and I had never even heard about it. So I watched it and like, wow, this is fun to watch. And Chuck and I came up with the idea, what if we sponsored a stream and they could talk about the Judas Files? So they were all over it. We paid them, we gave them a sponsorship fee. And what was cool, is they created the marketing graphics. They were marketing it on TikTok and Twitter and Facebook. So they were helping spread the word. And we were pulling in their audience that they already had, all their subscribers and anybody who's on Twitch that night. So it was just really fun. And, when you're saying think beyond even book platforms, something like this, it reaches such a wide audience and a different audience. And anybody who stopped by the stream, we kept putting the link up for the reader magnet so that they could get that, and we could get emails, and we had contests going, and we were giving away Hula Harry t-shirts for anyone who subscribed to their channel. So it was helpful for Lainey and her roommates, and they call themselves the Fellowship of Awesome. So there's 4 of them that are playing games at the same time.
And they built, you gotta tell them they played Minecraft. Is what they did the whole time they built. So our world, the book is set, at least half of the book is set in hell. So they built like the backdrop of the book in Minecraft, like some of the
that's cool.
houses and different things, and they were talking about it. It was really cool. It was fun.
Is it possible for you to send some screenshots from?
I will actually. What I'm going to do is pull some of the video clips, because one of the roommates, Casey, does great accents, and he was reading parts of the books in Canadian accent. I'll definitely send you that one. He did.
He was, eh?
Yes. And he did a sexy romance voice and was reading parts of it. So it was hysterical. And they had their viewership for that stream was higher than they had before. So it was fantastic. I'd do it again. It was just so much fun.
Oh, that is cool.
And I talked to them, and if other authors are looking at doing something like this, and we'll put it in the show notes, they'd be open to having other authors reach out to them. And if they feel it's a good fit, then that author could sponsor a stream and get this fun experience.
That's kind of cool. So how I guess the measures are, how did you track whether or not that had an impact, or is that still sort of it's more of a long-term thing? Because I imagine, and again, old guy here, I should ask my 17-year-old about Twitch, but is this a video that people can still continue to watch, or was it live only and now nobody else can see it? Or can somebody go back and watch the backlist Twitch experience?
So it was available for a couple months, because this was a couple months ago. It was available that anybody could go and watch after. I need to check if it's still there. Lainey said it doesn't last forever on there, but she did pull it off of there. So we do have it. So I can definitely pull clips so people can see how it works.
Okay. Because I'm just wondering about maybe long-term thing is, because I know my son, at least on YouTube, when he was younger and was just huge into Minecraft, for example, he would just watch hours and hours of YouTube videos of people playing Minecraft. And I think this may have been prior to Twitch being a thing, possibly. I'm guessing. I don't know. But I know he was watching them on YouTube. Because
I do have the link. We could probably put a link, or you have a YouTube channel. We don't have one.
Yeah.
I definitely.
I would be curious just to show authors what that experience looked like, because I'm very curious. You said they did the graphics and stuff like that. And again, what I love about this is really out of the box marketing. You're bringing the book in front of other audiences that may be interested because of the fantasy elements, or even potentially could be a sci-fi, because they play different games, right? That's not just they focus on different kinds of games. And obviously you said they were doing Minecraft, which is very customizable. My son made cool worlds, built all kinds of cool things. My partner's daughter created this phenomenal Hogwarts castle in Minecraft,
right?
As a young adult, because that was something that she grew up on the Harry Potter books. So what a flexible environment. I love the fact that they built your hell.
Right, exactly.
What a great flexible platform. But that is curious.
And they all had read at least the first book, and they all loved it. So to get those testimonials throughout that 3 hours. They would just talk about what they loved about it. It was great.
I was going to say, is that something you plan on doing again?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we had giveaways too. So we gave away a signed set of the whole Judas Files. And then somebody won their name in the 5th book. So to me, that's a good marketing thing to think long term. So when book 5 comes out, I can reach out to her and say, hey, your name's in the book.
Yeah, here you go. You're the main bad guy.
Yeah, that's what I said. You need to pick that character carefully.
I've done that with people where I've said, I'll kill you in a novel. And they paid for that privilege, but I usually get their approval. Okay, I'm going to kill you this way. Is that all right? Wow, that's fantastic. So you've got the Judas Files wrapping up with book 5. You've got the Sci-Fi series, the dystopian Sci-Fi series, wrapping up with book 3. Do you know what's next, or like, are you going back to romance? What's in the cards?
We haven't really talked about it, actually. We've been so busy wrapping up these last 2 books in the series. Like we've just been kind of power writing these last 2 books. We wanted to get them out with, like, this last year. We wrote quite a few books, and then we did these last 2 kind of at the same time, and getting them finished and edited. And we want to get them. We kind of want to get them. We wanted to make sure we got the racks out before the end of the year, and then the Judas Files, it'll be out. Probably, I think we were talking about January,
February,
something like that. But sometime in the very near future. So yeah, we've been so busy with that, we haven't really talked about what's next, kind of on the horizon. I don't know.
We do want to keep writing together. We just haven't decided what that's going to look like yet.
Yeah.
And we did. I don't know if it was when we first started doing the Judas Files and putting those out. We had a crazy year where our goal was 4 or 5 books that year.
Yeah.
And you have said this before, Mark, that's just not sustainable. And it's not.
It's not. Yeah.
We learned that pretty quickly, which is why we slowed down. And now we're trying to be more conscious and strategic on when we release it, what we're doing for marketing for those releases, and not just cranking everything out so fast. So it's helped.
Cool. So for people who have heard about the racks and the Judas Files, now where can listeners go to check out these books?
Oh, we'll just stare at you here. Obviously, on all platforms, they are available. But you can also go to our website, cgharris.net. And everything's on there, including the audiobooks, because we do have 4. We have the audiobooks for the first 4 Judas Files.
And you have the same narrator? Were you able to continue to work with that?
Yeah.
Awesome.
He's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, McLeod is.
Yeah. Having the 3 of you on was a lot of fun. It was a real treat chatting with the 3 of you about the collaboration, because again, I love the dark humor in that series, and I think he pulled off the dark humor in some really fascinating ways that I think did the book justice, or at least the first one, because I've only read the 9 so far. But shame on me for
exactly. You got to read the rest,
behind.
or listen to the rest.
I will listen to them. That's right, because that way I can listen to them while I'm doing other things.
Yes.
Cool. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming back to the podcast and sharing this really fascinating and unique experience with me.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's been great.
So one of the things that I'm really fascinated with in terms of what Chuck and Kerrie are doing is the constant experimentation, the willingness to try things, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. I love the fact that the collaboration and they've iterated over time too. It's like, okay, we're going to work on this romance, you're going to work on this science fiction, and we're going to work on this urban fantasy. But then in the experimentation that they're doing with the marketing is interesting in terms of discovering what works best in terms of the newsletter and getting new people onto the newsletter. And it didn't work immediately, but they kept at it and they tried new things and they kept experimenting. This Twitch experiment is a perfect example of that. It is getting this urban fantasy novel, which may be appealing to many people in the Twitch audience, these gaming audience, getting in front of a different audience and experimenting by throwing some money into sponsorship of such a thing. I'm actually tempted to see, well, is there something I can do? I'm going to be reaching out to find out, can I sponsor the Twitch with Canadian Werewolf series? Can I offer some freebies to your audience? Can I offer you guys some freebies so you can check it out and see? Because potentially it could be of interest. Who knows? But I'm willing to try, and I love the fact that Chuck and Kerrie are willing to try. Speaking of that, this is related to that, is they started wide, and then they went back and thought, well, we're going to try Kindle Unlimited, the KDP Select being exclusive on their ebooks, and try to give that a run, and it didn't work out for them. But at least they don't have that FOMO of, oh my God, everyone else is making $1 bazillion and they're exclusive, so I got to do it too. They gave it a shot and said, okay, let's give it a shot and see what we can do with it. And it obviously didn't work for them. But then when they came back to wide, they found this huge success with Apple. And again, it was a serendipitous moment. They reached out and let Apple know that they had this first free-in series. And they didn't even know that Apple actually featured it. And that's the thing. You never know. You may not even, they might discover it on their own. It could be the algorithms. It could be the merchandisers at places like Apple, Kobo, Nook, where they actually do human curation. And that is what happened at Apple. Some human saw it and went, whoa, this is cool. Let's feature it. And all of a sudden the series took off. But had they not been willing to experiment, had they not been willing to keep trying new things, and sticking it out, even when things weren't working, I'm like, okay, we're gonna keep at this. We're gonna apply this marketing. We're gonna keep working on the series. I love the fact that they've done that, and they've demonstrated that it's not always easy. It's not always a, hey, we did this thing and it worked perfectly the first time. No, they're gonna try. They're gonna iterate. They're gonna keep working at it because they understand the business aspect of it, and they're experimenting again with new marketing. So kudos to Kerrie and Chuck. I want to thank them for coming back on the podcast again. So I think Chuck and Kerrie have been the guests who've been on the podcast the most. So it's kind of fun. And I do love having return guests. One of the things I love about the podcast is I love bringing new voices that you may not hear on many of the other indie author specific podcasts where you may see the same cast of characters returning again and again. Great, love those voices. There's a reason why people keep having those awesome people back on. But I do want to try and bring different voices. That being said, yeah, okay, I brought Kerrie and Chuck back several times, but you'll notice every time I've brought them back, it's about something different. The topic is, there may be obviously overlap with collaboration, which I'm a big fan of, but there's always something new and innovative. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for new voices. I'm looking for voices that are trying new and innovative things and looking to try to share with you as many perspectives as I can from the book industry. Speaking of perspectives, I'm reading Book Wars by John B. Thompson. It is a gigantic, very academic tome about the effect of digital on publishing. I probably heard about it through Jane Friedman, through the Hot Sheet. And it's fascinating because this book is very, very much based on statistics from traditional publishing, but it's a stark reminder of why publishers think the way they do. When you actually look at the stats, the big publishers were making, the ebook sales for big publishers was growing. It got as high in some cases as 30%, 2012, 2014. Then it started to come back down. So from their perspective, they're not seeing the gigantic boom that indie authors are seeing, because indie authors are owning that marketplace. But for trad pubs, it's down to 20% of their ebook sales. So that's an interesting thing to see and to understand. And yes, this book is not going to, I think there is a chapter coming up later about the boom in self-publishing, but it's more focused on the impact of digital on the publishing industry. It even goes back to the advent of print on demand and how that could change the economics of the industry. But I love that this is very much focused on the academic. I would prefer to have a balanced approach to look at both, but it's really hard to get stats, accurate stats. You can get stats based on speculation, because Amazon never shares their data. Kobo does share plenty of their data publicly, but that's one retailer. And so it's difficult to get that data from the self-publishing side, because there's no way to amalgamate that data apart from happenstance and people who are sharing their scribe count charts and saying, well, this is like Kerrie and Chuck, as you'll see in the show notes. There's scribe count charts of how great their Apple sales are as a percentage. But there is no single source for the amalgamation of that information, because, being independent, all these different independent sources, you're just relying on volunteered information, and you may not be getting volunteered information from everyone. So that's one of the things to keep in mind. So we always have to take all of this data that we're seeing with a bit of a grain of salt. But anyways, wow, I'm just babbling. I realized, this is another reflection here, but I realized that once I finish this recording, then I have to go back and master it. I have to clean it up. I have to cut out the things where I clear my throat and breathe funny, or any of the really bizarre things that happen, or when I have to start again, which I would have cut out. You're not going to hear most of those things in this. Then I have to do the show notes. Then I have to do all of the harder work. It's easy to just stand here and talk into a microphone. All this other stuff it's the stuff that gets me down. But anyways, it's already nearing 8 a.m. Eastern, and I better get this done so I can get it to you, dear listener. And obviously, if you're listening to this, I did it. I actually got it out there. So, hey, yay! So much easier to listen back to it than it is to do the work. Anyways, like writing, isn't it? I hope this last rambling reflection didn't put you off too much, but I hope you did enjoy this episode. I hope you enjoyed the reflections and the things that we learned from Kerrie and from Chuck. And until next week and next episode, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you great writing and good, non-rambling stark reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.